So if you don't know, they gave Tachanka a 1.5 times scope and a 2x scope on his SMG, which is very, very powerful. If you don't know, 1.5 times scopes themselves are the best scopes in the entire game, and depending on if an operator has it or doesn't have it, can completely change if they're played and if they're won with. So giving someone a 1.5 is a huge deal. Not only did this for Omai, but they did it for Tachanka as well. Not only did they give him a 1.5, but they gave him a 2x as well. There's very little people on defense that have 2x scopes. I think Goyo and Rook are the only two other ones. Maybe Alibi on her little like shotgun DMR thing, I don't know. But very, very few defenders have 2x scopes, and it's really powerful because you can sit and hold long angles on defense while you're in sight through the entire map and get very easy picks, and it also allows you to play very, very aggressively. Pair this with Tachanka and his playstyle, and it becomes a force to be reckoned with. Also, they just buffed Tachanka's gadget in general, so I thought of all times to make a Tachanka guide, today was the day. The first part of the guide is the loadout section. So first of all, he has the option between his LMG or his 9x91. Now, before they give him a 1.5 times scope and a 2x on this gun, I would have told you that the LMG was probably the better option just because of the sight setup it provides. But even then, the submachine gun is better for gunfights, right? So at a certain point, I always just run the SMG. But now that he has a 1.5 and a 2x on this gun, there's absolutely zero reason to run the DMR literally ever. I would just run that, and on that I would run the extended barrel, the vertical grip, and the 2x. If you can't control the recoil with the extended barrel and 2x, then I would change the extended barrel to a flash hider. Going into his secondary guns, you should just bring the bearing 9. Having an automatic sidearm is 10 times better than having something that's semi-automatic, just because of the amount of bullets that you can put into somebody quicker. It also has a lot more ammo, and you can put an extended barrel on it for even more damage. So run the bearing 9, that's what I do. If you can't control the recoil, run flash hider. Going into his secondary gadgets, he has barbed wire or deployable shield. Now, given that his playstyle makes him have a launcher, it's very unsafe to use said launcher. So if you have a deployable shield that you can hide behind, it's very good for his kit, and it's something that is seen on Smoke. It's something that's seen on other people that need to use their gadgets behind a deployable shield to be safe. So it actually pairs very well with his playstyle, and even then, deployable shields are very useful in general. Even if you don't have a gadget that you use behind the shield, it's always going to be better than having barbed wire. So always run the shield, the bearing 9, and the SMG combo with either the 1.5 or the 2x. That's pretty much it for his loadout. Now I'm going to actually give you some tips and tricks and just a general guide of Tachanka and how to play him correctly. Now the first thing I'm going to go over is general playstyle. Now there are 3 entry denial operators in the entire game, 3 main ones anyway, that I'm going to go over. That's Smoke, Goyo, and Tachanka, obviously. Now, Goyo is meant to be played very, very late round, and the cool thing about Goyo is you place all of his gadgets in the prep phase, so even if you do die, the utility gets used by your teammates, right? So Goyo is meant to delay most of the late round pushes. Smoke is meant to get most of the early round, so a good example is you're sitting in elbow as Smoke, and you use all 3 of your smokes to delay the elbow rush, and then once they start pinching you off, you reinforce, and you just play the rest of the round out. Normally, people would say that you use smoke grenades for the last 30 seconds, but because of how fast-paced the meta is currently, I don't think that's very viable. And then third, we have Tachanka. Now Tachanka, the cool thing about him is he has so many of his gadget. It doesn't last very long, it doesn't have a huge radius, but he has a lot of them, meaning that you can play any sort of playstyle that you would want to play with Tachanka. You can play early round like Smoke, or you can play late round like Goyo. It doesn't really matter, you can do what you want. Now because of this, a lot of people play him as a secondary entry denial. They play him on top of Smoke or on top of Goyo. You don't typically play Tachanka by himself as an entry denial. There's 2 main reasons for this. One, people can just run through his fire. His fire does not have a big radius of which the fire covers, so people just run through it a lot of times. You can't use it as reliably as a smoke grenade or as Goyo fire. Secondly, again, he has a launcher, so it's a lot more unsafe to use him compared to somebody like Smoke or like Goyo, who's a lot more reliable in how they can use their utility. Third, like I said, Tachanka has a lot of fire grenades, meaning you use his entry denial whenever your other entry denial operators run out of entry denial or they're not in a position to where they can use theirs. So, like I said, Tachanka is best used as a secondary entry denial operator, but if you just want to play him by himself, well, stick around for the rest of the guide. Now that we've gone over general playstyle and how you need to be playing him throughout the round, let's go over some tips. First of all, with Tachanka, it's not like Smoke where wherever you throw it, it's going to stick to. His gadgets bounce only so many times before they eventually hit the floor and explode the fire, so you have to learn the projectiles of how his gadget works. It's very simple to learn this. As long as you go into a game, maybe a T-Hunt, maybe a custom game, and you just sit and you practice with his fire grenades and you practice the radius of them and you practice like how you shoot them, how they bounce, you can get a very good and easy feel for how to shoot these things, and then you don't have to worry about making some elaborate lineup across the map with Tachanka because you know how to shoot them and how to bounce them off of walls to get the fullest effect out of them. They're very hard to do, so learning this very early on is very, very important. The second thing that I want to talk about, which is applicable to not only Tachanka but also to Smoke, is when to actually use his gadget. So because he has a launcher, it's a lot more dangerous to use his gadget than somebody like Goyo or Smoke who can quickly throw it out, right? So there are some times where it would be cool to have entry denial in an area, but it's very unsafe to do so because of the position you're in or because of the amount of time that's remaining. So you have to learn a healthy balance between having your gun up and having your launcher out. One very easy way to do this is if you have two people pushing you from two different angles, you use your launcher on one person and you have your gun up for the other person, and vice versa. You never want to be launchering two people at once, and you never want to be taking gunfights with two people at once. You want to be using your utility on one and your gun on the other. That's how you balance it. Now, if you're in a 1v1 situation and you don't know whether you should be shooting them with fire or with bullets, use this very simple rule to gauge whether you should do this or not. Is it safe to launch from where I'm at, and can he see me while I'm launching my fire? If the answer is no, then use your fire. If the answer is yes, then just have your gun up and hold an angle. Pretty simple rule. You just have to figure out if you're safe to shoot fire where they are or where they're going to be, and if it's even going to be effective or not to do so. Another thing that I want to talk about with Tachanka is playing behind his or another person's deployable shield. Like I said, this is one of the very easy ways to make him more effective because, again, he has a launcher that makes it very dangerous for him to peek. If you're behind the deployable shield, though, this isn't an issue. Now, you might be saying, well, you still have to peek the deployable shield to shoot his fire. That's not true. Because of the way that this gadget bounces, you can shoot the roof from behind the deployable shield and it bounced down to the area that you want to shoot, which is again why I talked about in my first tip, you need to learn how to bounce these fire grenades so that you can get the most out of lineups that you create in your head or out of everyday scenarios like this one. Now, one tip, and arguably the most important tip that I'm going to give you, is using your Tachanka fire aggressively. So one thing that's cool about Tachanka is, again, he has so many fire grenades. So you don't have to use these sparingly. You can waste like 5 or 6 of them and still have, what, like 15 left? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. So one thing that's cool about Tachanka is you can use his fire very early, very late, and you can use it pretty much throughout the entire round and it not matter because you'll still guaranteed have some left. So what I like to do as Tachanka is I actually like to roam with him, and then I'll shoot fire grenades and waste as much time as possible, and once I feel like I'm not safe, maybe they're pushing me with a lot of people, maybe they're droning me out, then I'll back up near sight and I'll keep using fire to keep them out, and then once I feel like I'm getting pressured, then I move to the actual site, and then I start using fire on the site doors or site windows so that they feel even more unsafe. But using his fire to progressively waste as much time as possible for the roam clears or for the entire enemy team for that matter is very, very good, and it's something that I recommend doing once you're good at Tachanka. Maybe you're a high elo player that's already good at the game, because it is very risky, but it pays off very well, and I have a pretty high success rate playing this way with Tachanka. Now, the last tip that I'm going to give you is something called Maverick countering. Now, if you know what Maverick tricking is, you essentially put a line at the top of the wall with Maverick, and you put a line at the bottom of the wall with Maverick. And if you do this correctly, you can remove an entire reinforcement off of a wall so that a soft breacher can come in and open the wall. Now, Tachanka can completely counter this. How does he counter this? All you have to do is when they make the top line in the Maverick hole, you shoot your fire grenades through the hole that he makes, and the fire grenade will bounce to the ground and burn the ground underneath the Maverick's feet so he can't Maverick trick anymore. This also works for the bottom line. If he puts a Maverick hole in the bottom of the wall, you could shoot your fire grenades through the hole and burn his feet. So it's a very good Maverick counter. Not only is it very good at burning Maverick, but it's very good at wasting time for this Maverick because Maverick already takes a while to get a wall open. He's very slow at it. So if you can sit and waste a bunch of time and make this Maverick really have to speed things up, he'll make sloppy decisions, he'll peek the wall when he shouldn't be, his feet will peek the wall when you can shoot him, and overall it will waste so much time. Now, if we looked at how much time per entry denial operator maximum that every entry denial operator can waste, Smoke is last place, Goyo is the place after that, and Tachanka is first place. Tachanka can actually waste the most time with his entry denial because he just has so much of it after they buffed him. So that's why he's honestly the best counter to Maverick in this specific scenario. With that out of the way, that's pretty much it for the basic Tachanka guide. Like I said, he got buffed a bunch, so I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to make this video. If you like videos like this, like the video down below, sub the channel down below as well, because I make videos like this all the time. My name's Alka, and I will see you in the next video. Later.